Hello, hello. This is your host, Sheraz Ahmed, ready to kick off another bite-sized episode of the Crypto Valley Association podcast. A special thank you goes out to Script for supporting us. Now let's discover together the growing trends of this fast-moving space and try to shed some light on the mysteries it contains. We are joined by Tom Albright, CEO of Bittrex Global, one of the most trusted cryptocurrency exchanges, especially renowned for its next-level security. So let's dive straight into the hidden world of exchanges. Tom, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
I am doing very well, and thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Oh, the pleasure is ours. So maybe let's dive straight in, and you can tell us a little bit more how you
Perfect.
first found out about cryptocurrencies or blockchain technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it, it really is such a fascinating industry, and people come into it from so many different directions. So, so my background is actually as a lawyer, as an attorney. So, I spent 12 years as a transactional lawyer in the Silicon Valley and San Francisco offices of O'Melveny and Myers. And
Mhm.
starting in mid 2017, we started really doing more and more fintech work and started bringing in blockchain and cryptocurrency clients as the technology and the industry and the whole sector was heating up, and started doing more and more work with blockchain based companies through the second half of 2017. And in November or December of 2017 is when I first started doing work for Bittrex as outside counsel. And I met the founders and a number of the executives, and really loved what they were doing, the mission of the company, and really just started doing more and more work with them over the next 5 or 6 months until I was essentially doing almost all of my work for Bittrex. And at that point, it started to make sense to transition out of the law firm and come in house at Bittrex. So in I think May or June of 2018, I transitioned over to work full time at Bittrex as the general counsel in the US. So I did that for about a year and a half. And then this past February, I transitioned into a different role, and I'm now the CEO of Bittrex Global. So my discovery of cryptocurrency was really sort of organic through the work I was doing. And as I said, I really loved the work that Bittrex was doing, the mission. And I started looking at the cryptocurrency and blockchain space. And I was just amazed at the innovation that was going on, what people were building, pace of innovation, especially. And I, sort of fell in love with the technology and thought this is essentially like being in the internet industry in the mid to late 90s. It's so cutting edge and it's changing the world. And it's something that I just really have to be a part of.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about what fuels your passion
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
for Bittrex. And so maybe you can tell us more about Bittrex Global and the role that it plays within this growing industry and the importance of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Bittrex as a whole, the Bittrex umbrella essentially has three separate companies. There's the Bittrex technology company that builds the technology and the tools, wallets, matching engine, all of the technological underpinnings to the exchanges.
Mhm.
Then there's Bittrex US, which is exchange that operates in the US for US only customers. And then third is Bittrex Global, which is the company I'm the CEO of. And we are based in Vaduz, Liechtenstein. We operate under the Blockchain Act in Liechtenstein. We're
Mhm.
supervised by the FMA there. And we service all of the non-US customers under the Bittrex platform. So in Europe, Asia, South America, Africa, and really anywhere that's not US, those customers come through Bittrex Global.
Okay, okay. So yeah, it's always a common question that arises is what's the difference between Bittrex US and Bittrex Global? Why are there two different ones? And it's great to know that there are three actually, which is very very interesting. And maybe you can tell us why Bittrex Global is said to be one of the most trusted crypto exchanges.
Absolutely, yeah. So Bittrex as a whole, if you look at Bittrex technology, the initial exchange and the beginnings of the platform was founded back in 2014. And our three founders at the time were working at Amazon and had worked at Microsoft and various other really large technology companies, basically building and operating cybersecurity platforms for those companies. For example, they built the Amazon payments platform and but continuously help to
Mhm.
secure that. And we're really in that industry sort of widely recognized as some of the world's leading experts on cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm.
And so they brought that ethos over to blockchain and to building and launching Bittrex. Fundamental priority was having the best security in the world, the
Mm-hmm.
absolute best technology for securing blockchain and cryptocurrency asset and protecting customers that way.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of coming off the Mt. Gox hack, and crypto was really viewed as the Wild West at
Mm-hmm.
that time and was kind of a niche industry. And so, there are people dabbling who didn't have the same background that our three founders had. So they
Mm-hmm.
were really able to build a platform and an exchange that just had, a much higher level of security than I think anyone else in the industry had at the time. And that commitment to security, that commitment to doing the best thing for our customers, to keeping them safe, protecting them from all sorts of bad actors that there might be in this industry, has really been the driving force and the foundation and the backbone for what we do at Bittrex Global and what the other Bittrex companies do as well. So
Mm-hmm.
that is really the foundation, and our to this day,
I
our
see.
commitment remains to secure our customers' assets, to help them build and grow their wealth by being able to access cryptocurrencies,
Mm-hmm.
blockchain assets, which we think is the absolute best way to build wealth going forward and to do it in a safe and secure manner.
Yeah. Okay. I definitely see that. And just picking up from the point, I think some people still regard crypto and blockchain as the Wild West.
It's true. Yes. It really depends on your perspective and how long you've been watching the industry, I think. But I like to think we're evolving.
Oh, yes, slowly but surely. And maybe are there any other points than security that you'd say differentiate Bittrex from some of your competitors like Kraken, Coinbase, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think we sort of mentioned very quickly, but regulation and licensing compliance are really
Mm-hmm.
foundational as well as part of that. We really do want to move past this Wild West ethos and outlook where anything goes. And, we think that in order for blockchain and cryptocurrency to take the next step in its evolution and integrate with the traditional financial system and open up access to the billions of people around the world that haven't discovered blockchain yet, that there needs to be appropriate, well thought out regulation. There needs to
Mm-hmm.
be licensing and oversight of entities operating in the space, including exchanges. And that's why we're headquartered in Vaduz. It's why we operate under the Blockchain Act. That's why we've actually just added a second license in Bermuda to operate a cryptocurrency derivatives exchange, which will be expanding our product offerings. But we thought it was absolutely critical rather than just launching in sort of this gray area where maybe you're related, maybe you're not, maybe you're supposed to do KYC, AML best practices, maybe you're not, like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
competitors do. We wanted to have that license. We wanted to be regulated and overseen by the BMA, the Bermuda Monetary Authority, which is the regulator there. So customers can feel safe using the platform, knowing that we're following best practices and that there's a regulator that's overseeing and able to validate that.
I see. And maybe let's move forward on that point that you just touched quickly, that you've most recently brought out the ability on Bittrex Global to be able to trade with leverage. Would you like to provide us with a little bit more of the reasoning behind that decision?
Yes, absolutely. So, I think that adding the ability to trade derivatives, do leverage tokens, futures, all those sorts of things are incredible opportunities for customers that want to trade, want to boost their returns, that can successfully manage their risk versus, their positions and all those sorts of things. And
Mm-hmm.
it's something that's really offered in the traditional financial world. And we're seeing that people that are coming in as institutional traders or other sophisticated traders really want these cutting edge products. And, we see a lot of other exchanges offering them. And as I said, this either completely unregulated area or in a regulatory gray space. And,
Mm-hmm.
I think we've seen some fallout from that recently in the last couple of months or so. But we want to be able to offer those products and we want to do it in a safe and secure manner. So we're starting with leverage tokens.
Mm-hmm.
Customers are going to be able to get leverage positions up to 3x leverage without having to manage their own margin, their own collateral, manage positions. These will be leverage tokens that trade the same as any other token on our platform, but give customers exposure to leverage. So, for example, the Bitcoin Bull token will move for each 24-hour period. It will move in price 3 times the amount that Bitcoin does. So it gives customers who want that leverage access to it. But again, they don't have to manage positions. They don't have to deal with posting collateral. They don't have the potential to be liquidated if the market suddenly gaps up or down. So it's I would say, an easier way for most people to get exposure to leverage.
I see. It's very interesting. And that approach is a very interesting one. And maybe you can tell us about the importance of education, because if you're offering these more advanced features to your traders, it must be important for them to actually know what they're doing, right?
That is absolutely right. Yes, I think it's critical for really anyone who's trading cryptocurrencies, tokens, or frankly, if you're trading traditional equities or bonds or, foreign exchange, FX on fiat markets, even to understand the products you're trading and how they work, what assets are underlying those tokens, all those sorts of things. So yes, we view customer education as a critical part of this. We want anyone who's accessing these tokens to understand exactly what they're getting into, how the assets work, how they obtain the 3x leverage or the other ratios, how they move in price and why. And so we're making a big effort to make sure all of that information is available on our website. We're talking about it on podcasts and things like that. So we want to make these things accessible. And in a lot of ways, we want to demystify what's going on here. I think there are many, many people out there. If you look at the traditional financial world, you see ETFs and things that are similar, where customers can get 3x leverage on the S&P 500 via an ETF. And I think a lot of people jump into those things without knowing exactly what they are or how they work, just because they're available through their broker. So we want to empower people to, access these products and use them to help build their wealth in a safe, smart, and deliberate way.
Okay, and yes, as you just said, this demystification approach, I think it's very important. And if we follow on from that, do you believe that education is the key then to adoption? Would you believe that there are other factors that need to come into play for more users to come onto the crypto markets?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I think that education and exposure are absolutely a critical part of increasing adoption. I don't think that it's obviously the only key item, but it certainly is a very important one. And one of the things that I see, and you can see how I got drawn into the industry, is that as people are exposed to this technology and to the industry and to the fundamentals of what these assets can do, as people get introduced to Bitcoin, they learn a little bit about it. They start looking at how does it compare to fiat assets and things like that. And, what's the outlook if I put money into Bitcoin versus if I keep it at my bank? What's my outlook for, 1, 2, 5 years from now in terms of my ability to grow my wealth? And as people start seeing that, they are essentially inevitably drawn into the ecosystem. It's almost impossible to look at what's going on with central bank money printing and the way unemployment is just crushing the real world economy, and then look at Bitcoin and how it's anti-inflationary and such a amazing store of wealth and a backbone for a new financial system, and not think of that as a better way to move forward and grow your wealth. So I think education and exposure are definitely keys to getting people into the ecosystem. And I think, as people start exploring and looking at things and understanding what cryptocurrency is, what Bitcoin is, it really empowers them to take control of their own financial health and financial future. So absolutely a critical part of growing the ecosystem.
Okay. And I know that we're going further down into the rabbit hole, but I just wanted to
it goes deep, so it's hard not to sometimes.
It definitely, and maybe I'll just go a little bit one layer deeper before we rise back up. And you mentioned that cryptocurrencies could bring about a new financial system, and how far do you think that's going to take us? Do you believe that cryptocurrencies will be will have a breakthrough within the financial systems?
I absolutely do. Yes, I view blockchain technology as, sort of a transformative technology that is
Mhm.
ultimately going to filter through the entire financial system. I think there will be a lot of people who intentionally choose to access blockchain and blockchain technologies, cryptocurrencies. But I think there is also going to be a huge component of people who are relying on blockchain as part of their day-to-day life without ever
Mhm.
even knowing it. Um,
Mhm.
and I mentioned I was an attorney for a long time doing corporate finance, and I worked
Mhm.
with companies throughout their entire life cycle. And companies would start, founders, put some money in and bootstrap it.
Mhm.
Then they get money from friends and family. Then they might go out to a VC fund. Then they might
Mhm.
go out to bigger VC funds or private equity,
Mhm.
and then ultimately they can do an IPO and access public markets. And there are massive inefficiencies at each of those stages where you know tracking who owns a company, as simple
Mhm.
as it might
Mhm.
sound, actually becomes really complicated and really hard as you go from these. I know that there's three of us and we each own
Mhm.
a third. Simple.
Mhm.
But then you bring in five or six family members and you have to start tracking on an Excel
Mhm.
spreadsheet. And then you bring in a VC fund and there's complicated conversions, and it's easy to get lost in that down the line. But
Mhm.
if you start at the beginning of the life cycle of the company, you found your company, you tokenize the stock, you put it on blockchain with smart contracts, and then you move through that life cycle really simply and easily. There's always everyone knows who owns what, it's decentralized, it's an immutable record, and it lets you go from tiny private seed stage company all the way through to public company, utilizing
Mhm.
the same record keeping, the same technology, limiting who can access the stock and buy it at certain points.
Mhm.
And you just change the smart contract, essentially push a button, and you go from private company to public company.
Mhm.
And I think that, that's just one example of how blockchain technology and the tokenization of real world assets makes the financial system much more efficient and much more accessible. And I think that that's going to, again, anytime you can remove that friction, it helps people grow their wealth. It helps people focus on doing the things that they need to do rather than, spending time on logistical inefficiencies. So
Mhm.
I'm a huge believer in the long-term growth of this technology. And that you see that in artwork, in real estate, in
Mhm.
digital identities, and just all sorts of applications for this technology that are driving incredible use cases. So it's fascinating to watch and it's fascinating to be a part of.
Oh, indeed it is. And maybe if we continue on that trail of thought, where do you think exchanges are headed within the crypto space?
Yeah, so I think that exchanges are really uniquely positioned to provide access to people all around the world to this
Mhm.
technology. Obviously to continue that example, where companies form and they have their stock on the blockchain. If you want to start trading in a private pool, you can do that really easily. If you want to limit access to, say VC funds or private equity, you can let them trade that way through the exchange, or then ultimately open it up to the public. So I think as people build and these use cases, tokenize real world assets, all those sorts of things, that I think that people around the world are going to primarily access those through exchanges, similar
Mhm.
to how you access the traditional financial system through a bank or a broker or things like that.
Mhm.
So I think exchanges, with the expertise that we have in managing hundreds of assets and managing different blockchains, and most importantly, securing those things,
Mhm.
those assets, as well as managing the different regulations, AML, KYC, the transaction monitoring, all those sorts of things. I think exchanges are really, perfectly situated to be the entry point and the gateway to the blockchain ecosystem, and then also to help bridge the gap between traditional financial system and cryptocurrency financial system.
Hmm. And you mentioned exchanges being that entry point into the crypto sphere. What do you see as other main components that are going to develop in the future, and their importance within the industry in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think that as the industry evolves, I really think we're right at the beginning of this technology accelerating. We're moving from say over the last 6 years or maybe a little bit earlier, very technical people who really understood the technology, understood how to secure their private keys, understood how to use hardware wallets, understood, sending and receiving funds, all those sorts of things. And we're very happy to deep dive into the ecosystem and the technology. And, there's always going to be those kinds of users. There's always going to be people who want to live on that cutting edge. And I think that there will be a portion of the industry that evolves to serve them. And we're seeing it now with really the rise of DeFi. People that want to be managing their private keys, want to do things on chain, really want to be technologically sophisticated, will have that avenue. There will be other people who want to access the assets, but either don't feel comfortable or are just learning and need assistance with that. And I think, exchanges like Bittrex Global, where we've had 6 or 7 years of experience of securing these assets and protecting customers, and it's a great way even for anyone who just wants to get started in the industry to do that. And then if you want to go farther and move into DeFi or move into more complicated things, that's fantastic. But exchanges provide a gateway where you don't have to. So I think the industry overall is, and I think it's important as we add. There's 8 billion people in the world today. And I think, again, almost all of them are ultimately going to be exposed to blockchain and cryptocurrency. But I think a very small percentage of them are going to really deep dive into the technology. And so, linking the traditional financial world, making blockchain as simple as going to your brokerage or your bank account, via an app on your phone to see your holdings, to make trades, to buy and sell, all those sorts of things. I think that's critically important. And I think that's long-term how the industry is going to look. There's going to be, a whole spectrum of simple for people who want simple, all the way down to complicated and self-managed for people who want that. So I think it's going to provide people a lot more choice in how they access the financial system, how they build their wealth, how they access these assets, all those sorts of things.
Okay, yeah, the liberty of choice, right? That freedom to do what you believe is right. And if you want to take the responsibility of holding your private keys, then you should be able to do so. So, wow, it's very interesting. Tom, thank you so much for those valuable insights. For unfortunately coming to the end of this conversation, we could probably go on for much longer. But
anytime you start going down the rabbit hole, like we could talk for hours on it. But yes, I don't know the listeners would appreciate that, but
but please, do you have anything else that you'd like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, absolutely. I would really just like to ask all the listeners out there to come check us out at global.bittrex.com, to follow us on social media. Our Twitter is pretty simple, at Bittrex Global. You can follow me at Tom Albright. And if you really want to learn more about what we're doing at Bittrex Global and start going down the rabbit hole, obviously follow the Crypto Valley Association podcast, but we've also just recently launched our Bittrex Global podcast called The Bit. It's myself and our COO, CFO, Steven Stoneberg, similar bite-sized content. And we're doing some deep dives with some fascinating guests. So I would really encourage everyone to check that out.
Awesome.
And give it a listen.
Thank you. Well, if our audience have gotten this far into the episode, then they'll know to go and watch the Bitcast, the Bittrex podcast, and enjoy that. So thank you so much for sharing that. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, feel free to check out more on our website, cryptovalley.swiss, where we host plenty of events, educational content, and even provide information on how you can join our growing community. So thanks again, Tom, for joining us.
Sheraz, thank you so much for having me. It's been lots of fun. And again, thanks so much.
It's my pleasure. So stay tuned, stay safe, and until next time from the Crypto Valley in Switzerland. Bye-bye.